we talked about your Christmas promotion, but you also have a price list that is more of boutique pricing.
Correct.
But really the process for creating your price list is the same.
It's the same.
What's the first thing you do?
The first thing I do is I decide, how long is the session going to take, how much work is involved on myself, on my staff, the average, and I've done it for years, so I know approximately, how long a senior session is going to take and how much work on the back end I'm going to do, the same way with a child. So I sort of
kind of evaluate your time?
I take my time first and how long it's going to take. So then, for example, it's really easy. So most senior sessions take about 3 hours. Mm-hmm. So I have that time block. That's probably the biggest portion of my income.
Okay.
So I have that 3-hour time block. What can I do in 3 hours to achieve the average I need to make per hour to make me profitable?
Okay.
So, for example, for a senior that I do in 3 hours, our average is about $2,000. So if I'm going down to children's sessions, and I can do 2 children's sessions in that same 3-hour span, and with children you have to give a little padding, so you can't just go one right away.
Right.
So then I know that I need to achieve, an average sale of at least $1,000 per to make the same as if I shot a senior. So you have to think about lost opportunity, and I have a feeling that a lot of photographers don't really think of the idea of I could do something else in that time to be profitable.
Right. So if you've been in business for a while, you can kind of tweak your price list, and you can kind of work with that, looking at what your past has been.
Right.
So say, for example, we're trying to create a price list and we want the average sale to be $800. Mm-hmm. Tell me what do you do to get there? How do you develop that?
Well, for me, I actually I do collections or packages because I feel like it's a lot easier for me to hit those target price points a lot quicker. Right. So, for example, if I do an a la carte system, basically every sale starts at 0.
Right. And this way you kind of guide your clients a little bit better. Right. You give them a starting place.
And they don't really know what they want. They come in and they've never done it before. They don't really know. Right. So for me, I can have an entry level. So I can say my lowest package is, XYZ dollars. For seniors, it's like $600. So, it's a starting point. I'm starting at $600.
So you're deciding where your barrier to entry is going to be.
Exactly.
How high or low that's going to be.
Exactly.
And because seniors are more boutique for you, you're going to set that a little bit higher than
right.
you
And
would.
They take longer, and so I can do, in the same time span, do less. So, so I set that up. And then I basically sit down knowing that I want, if I wanted an $800 average, I would basically sit down and say, okay, I'm going to have 5 collections. We're going to start there, and so you'd have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And in the third spot, I would have $800.
Okay.
So, boom, you're at $800.
So you're putting what you want your average to be
right in the middle.
In the middle. Okay. Right. Because people always go to the middle.
People go to the middle.
That makes sense.
People are going to go right to the middle.
Sure.
So immediately right out of the gate. And now I haven't figured out what's going to be in that package or anything like that.
You just know you're going to charge $800.
I know that third, the middle package is going to be $800 because that's what I want to achieve.
Right.
And then I'm going to sit down and start thinking other things. Well, what's going to be my barrier to entry level? That's where number 1 is. I don't want anybody to buy number 1.
Right.
And my 5th package is going to be, exorbitant. You don't want anybody to buy that package either. But it basically...
Well, you wouldn't mind if they bought that package.
You can...
They just might not buy it as often.
They won't buy it as often. I mean, that's not the, but the goal is to set up the value for the mid area, which people want to go. They want to feel normal, average. They want to do what other people do. What do most people do? They ask me all the time. Well, they do this.
So what's interesting is I feel like with pricing, there's different components that come into pricing, right? So we think about pricing strategy, which is what we were just discussing. So strategy is about how are we laying out our price list? How many collections are we offering? How do we steer them to where we want them to go? And the first step being just what do we want our our average to be? You know, what are we projecting?
Right.
So keeping all of that stuff in mind, once you actually start putting your products into your collections, the next piece that we run into is just making sure that those collections are profitable.
Right.
Right. So making sure that you're making the markup that you need to make. I know PPA recommends 25% cost of sales on products. So when you're creating those collections, you're keeping that in mind.
Oh yeah. I sit down when I'm tweaking or making a price list. I sit down and actually, so I'll include once I've set the averages, and then I set what's going to be in the packages, and then I actually go to each one and I figure out cost of sales for each thing. What it's going to cost me to print, what it's going to cost me to package it, what it's going to cost, all of those things. And this is really important. I take into account that if a lot of photographers tend to like say, well, I'll be doing the retouching, or I'll be doing this, I'll be doing the color correcting. Right. And so they don't really put that into the equation of how much that cost is. They're just eating up their own time. And I try to sit down and figure out that if tomorrow, like I broke my arms and legs and I really literally couldn't do anything, how much would it cost me to produce an 8x10? And
they had to outsource everything.
You have to outsource everything, from color correction to retouching to archiving it to a CD to packaging it. I mean, and you can go to any lab and you can check box all of those things. So go in, check box, color correct, retouch, package, because you can get packaging now at all of the labs, and archive it and see how much it costs to produce that one image. Right. And it's a lot more than people realize, and they're doing that work, but they're not really charging it or figuring into their cost of sales.
Great.
But I sit down with my 5, and so I know this package costs, XYZ to produce every one of them, and I sit down and figure out. And guess what? Some things too, as we go up in price, so if people start spending $2,000, the profit margin might not be as high as it is in my third mid package, but my profit is a lot higher.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Does that make sense? It's kind of hard. And it's interesting. So I think as photographers, or what kind of studio you're going to run, you have to decide, are you going to be really high volume, or are you going to be low volume, or are you going to be somewhere in between? And the other thing is your business model, like mine, actually meets in different markets or different products that I sell, different lines. It's different.
Okay.
So for the Christmas event, it's a very high volume. Low cost,
and a very different clientele.
To my high school senior work, which is very high end, I do, 60 or under seniors a year. 60 at the max. And their average is $2,000. It's an experience. We're going to go where they want to go. They're going to change multiple times. It's going to be very unique. We're going to create them a custom graduation announcement, that they purchase, obviously. But again, it's two very unique, but in the same business. So and that's part of sitting down and deciding what a line or what you're going to be, and understanding that, and then creating a price list. So those price lists are very different.
How many different price lists do you have?
Right now I really have 3. But I can have a lot sometimes. But most time it's 3. So I have a high school senior price list.
Okay.
And generally, like general portraiture that I do day to day, that includes newborns, babies, families, and all of that line. And then the high volume stuff, which is Christmas or event. I usually do 2 events a year, one at Christmas and one at Easter. We do a prom, same thing. It's a very high volume, similar type of deal. So usually I have about 3 to 4 price lists. Like the prom varies a little from the Christmas because we're not selling the same items. Same thing for seniors. I'm not selling seniors the same thing that I'm selling for newborns. But the price points are completely different. So like in the Christmas one, the lowest package is $90, and the highest package is like $275. But for a high school senior, the lowest is $600. And the highest being, like $3,000. So you can see the difference.
That's all focused on what it is that you're trying to achieve. And how many of the sessions you're going to end up doing.
And that's why those goals are so important, to understand what you're trying to achieve when you're making a price list.